When a massive public infrastructure project fails due to cost overruns and graft, we are witnessing a failure of systemic engineering. Traditionally, we try to solve this by finding more trustworthy politicians. A more stable approach is to design rigid mathematical constraints into the state itself. This involves applying negative feedback loops to public funding. In engineering, a negative feedback loop is a self-regulating mechanism that triggers a response to oppose any deviation from a target state. Applying algorithms to civic funding can automatically trigger financial shutdowns when reckless spending occurs. This code makes civic theft mathematically impossible. Imagine you are a politician intent on siphoning public funds for personal gain. Standing between you and the Treasury is a programmatic funding machine. It processes every request for public money according to a predefined set of rules. This machine operates using 3 specific algorithmic constraints: the price lock, the 3-stage gate, and the debt brake. Every attempt to extract capital is subject to these interlocking mathematical defenses. The first vulnerability in public works is the concept pitch. This is when a politician sells an uncosted idea to the public without a defined budget. Pitching an idea without a fixed cost allows for an infinite budget inflation later in the project's lifecycle. To block this, the system mandates preliminary public procurement. This requires a rigorous, transparent contractor bidding process that takes place entirely before the project is presented for funding. As this diagram shows, multiple contractor bids are filtered into a single, locked numerical price ceiling. This happens before the project ever reaches a public portal. This exact cost is crystallized before a single dollar of civic money is ever pledged by the public. This sequence prevents a bad actor from slowly inflating the budget over time through small incremental approvals. If a contractor attempts to exceed this price ceiling after the lock is established, the funding stops. The contract is legally voided. The price lock mechanism shields the public from hidden overruns. The concept pitch is no longer a viable route for corruption. Even with a locked price, fully funding a massive project upfront provides a pool of capital that can be siphoned away before work is completed. The secondary defense is the 3-stage gate. At Gate 1, citizens are strictly limited to funding an independent feasibility study. They are not yet funding the construction itself. The project is legally barred from progressing until this study confirms the project is viable and necessary. Advancing to Gate 2, the public funds only the creation of complete blueprints and ecological documentation. The final construction capital only unlocks if the Gate 2 documentation is verified and published in full. This phased approach prevents politicians from accessing the bulk of the money at the beginning of their term. Slicing the project into distinct rounds starves corrupt projects early, denying the upfront capital required for graft. The final loophole for a corrupt actor is bypassing the domestic taxpayer by looking for money elsewhere. Massive international bank loans are often used to fund pet projects without immediate public scrutiny. The countermeasure is the algorithmic debt brake. Proposing a project funded by credit automatically increases the required parliamentary supermajority needed to pass it. The mathematical formula is 20% plus half of the credit percentage. As the debt percentage rises, the required vote count in the assembly follows. For example, an 80% bank loan project automatically requires a 60% supermajority to pass. This effectively forces a ruling party to burn massive political capital to push a loan through the assembly. Reaching this threshold requires negotiating with the opposition, which subjects the project to intense political scrutiny. Reckless sovereign debt becomes a direct threat to the ruling party's political survival. The debt brake mathematically links financial recklessness to political vulnerability, closing the final loophole. The 3 traditional methods of public corruption are blocked by this programmatic funding machine. First, preliminary procurement makes price inflation impossible. The 3-stage gate makes it impossible to siphon bulk capital upfront. The algorithmic debt brake makes it impossible to bypass taxpayers with foreign debt. These 3 nodes create a continuous filter for every dinar spent in the Republic. This engineered model provides a level of durability that traditional political promises cannot match. A system that assumes the presence of bad actors is more secure than a system that relies on finding good ones. This architecture forces even a dishonest actor to operate within the specific parameters of the public interest.